So I was raised in a house with 6 kids, 2 parents, 5 boys, 1 girl, and abuse was commonplace in our household. At 16, it was actually at a New Year's Eve party that I smoked heroin for the first time. And it was like that warm hug that I'd never gotten from my father. And that led to cocaine abuse, further heroin abuse, and eventually fentanyl and methamphetamines.
For approximately 20 years of our marriage, it was really a living hell. My husband and I had no communication. He would come home from work, barely acknowledge me, go straight to his computer, and that was pretty much our life.
In October of 2018, I got diagnosed with brain cancer with a very large tumor at the base of my brainstem that was just wreaking havoc in my body. It was causing synovial fluid not to flow from my brain and down my spine, and so my head was just saturated with brain fluid to the point where I was told that I was going to die.
Although I had certain levels of success, like in university and bodybuilding, financially, with a really successful business, eventually that addiction would rob me of everything. I would lose my kids eventually, I would lose a marriage, and eventually end up homeless.
Between our second and third child, we were pregnant with a girl, and we were told that she had Turner's syndrome, which meant that she wasn't going to grow, she wouldn't have female organs, she probably wouldn't survive the birth. Medical staff told us, we needed to address that issue. Family told us the kindest thing for us to do was to have an abortion.
Once we found out what the cause was, and I was in emergency surgery the next day, I was in the hospital for 40 days after that. It was a very arduous recovery. All kinds of complications and problems came up. I had another scan 3 or 4 months later. The tumor had come back in full force. In fact, it was bigger than the previous time.
I remember being in the waiting area, and there were all these women who wanted their abortions, and there was me who really I didn't want it. It's just I didn't feel I had any other option. And so we did. We aborted our baby girl. I don't remember discussing the hurt after the event, and I didn't know that this had troubled my husband for years.
I was facing about 5 years in prison. I think I'd completed my 2nd treatment center for substance use disorder, and a friend of mine brought me to Springs. I think in that moment, heard Leon speak for the first time. I left just filled with so much hope, and then quickly engaged in the community here, and then continued to meet God through the men that were in Springs, through the men's breakfast, through the life courses. And I met other men that had been through similar, not the same, but similar experiences that I had experienced, and they gave me hope.
I've been watching the Women Arise conference from Andrew Womack's ministry. They started to do a theatrical presentation called Overturned about a woman who's she's really dying, and she is regretting in her life her stance on abortion, and come to find out that she actually had a son who she aborted. And the 2 women that are with her, helping her through this last stages of her life, are believers. And they tell her that her son is with Jesus. And then they ask her, "Did you name your son?" I'm not glued in, but I heard, "You should name your son." And I just lost it at that point. I said, "Well, God, what are we supposed to call this baby, this girl?" And he gives me, the name comes to me, Abigail. So I go down to my computer and I search meaning of Abigail, and it means the Father's joy. I'm just crying again. I messaged my husband and I said, something happened that I wasn't expecting, that obviously needed to happen and need to talk when we get home. So he came home and I started relaying the story. I say, I believe we need to name this child. And he goes, "I named her 5 years ago." I said, "Well, what did you call her?" And he said, "I named her Abigail." Obviously, we needed healing from that. I don't even know the extent of what that healing is, but God knows.
So I went through a second surgery, but There was a big difference between this surgery and the previous one. This surgery, which was supposed to be 8 hours, ended up being 2.5 hours. The tumor that was there just disintegrated. I was in the hospital for 20 days instead of 40. I was able to start walking and swallowing much sooner, and today I'm cancer-free.
We were willing to be changed. And when we surrendered our individual lives to what the Lord wanted, He brought our marriage together. Within, it was overnight. I was looking forward to him coming home from work. I wasn't dreading his days off. And one day we were driving in the car, just going nowhere, just driving in the car. And I was in awe because I knew that this cloud, this heaviness had gone. I suddenly felt alive. I'm like, my goodness, we're in a marriage that's working.
On December 20th, I just took 3 years clean. I am a completely free man from any charges of probation from the criminal justice system. And now today, I should have brought it with me actually. Now today I have a pass that gets me into any provincial prison in the province of Alberta because they trust me to actually work with the inmates for addiction counseling.
God healed our marriage of 33 years.
God has healed my heart from a lifetime of addiction and suffering.
God healed my body. The truth that was written and spoken 2,000 plus years ago is true today. It is by His stripes that I am healed.
Although I love the doctors and the psychiatrists, nothing gave me what God's given me.
God is coming after you. He wants to break down every false belief, every unbelief, because He wants you to walk in the freedom and the fullness that He has for you. And there is nothing that will stop Him from doing that.